I'm Mr. North, and today we're going to be talking about tape measures, templates, and more. Now, the thing you should know is, is I always say get a tape measure first when going into wargaming because you're going to need one to size up the table at least. Sometimes games are designed for 4x4, 6x4, 3x3, or other such designations. It's important to know how big the board you're going to be playing on, and if you're going to be using mats or if you're just going to be covering it up with a sheet. And to make certain of the area you're going to be playing on is always use the handy dandy tape measure. Make sure it's not a little too big, not a little too small, because it affects how you're going to be moving your minis on the board and the size of your terrain. It's good to know for everything that you need to get. You don't need to get something fancy. You could get something like this. Got a tape measure from a hardware store. Right here. Now, I've worked with stuff that's too big, but this one, it's small, it's light, and you can get away with a lot. Now, some tape measures have different designations for centimeters on it, but since I live in North America, I'm not really going to tell you where. And here's a hint, it uses the imperial system. Now, I use it myself so many times. I've been using this one for years. Everyone has their own favorite tape measure they like to use. That said, always get one first.
Tape measure, it's small enough you could use it for IT work slash carpentry, but not too small where it doesn't have enough length so you could actually have proper measurement. And it's big enough so you could actually read the thing. Aside, be a little bit mindful when you're pulling the measuring bit back in. The little bit of metal here can't break off. Now, this particular one I have right here, I've had for over 10 years worth of work, worth of wargaming, and I'm quite fond of it. To keep bits of metal, if you're not careful, you just take the little thing around the 1 inch mark. That way, with some little bit of electrical tape, it'll last forever. You just need to make sure when you withdraw the measuring bit that it just doesn't break off. Measures there are templates, which companies have been making their own or suggested using certain items. An example which here is the Song of Ice and Fire measuring stick. It's divided up into certain areas, half range. You flip it over and you see here it's also measured in inches. Now, templates have been used since Chainmail First Edition. And as you can see here, I'll cover that game in another video. Another template right here is the Star Wars Legion movement templates. Now, I paint the liberty of painting them because I like to. 9 times out of 10, if you see a company provide plastic templates, it's going to be gray. Now, most of them are not going to be bendy like the cardboard ones. It's a general idea to understand the differences between companies is how they make their templates. You can buy custom ones from Etsy for your games, but you don't have to. Now, it is nice to have most templates like the Star Wars Legion ones are just pre-measuring sticks. You can use a tape measure and figure out the distance, but templates speed up the time and make things a bit easier for certain games, especially if the game itself uses templates in particular.
Now, the only thing you need to know about templates on tape measures and all that is that you could just use the one the games come with from the box, or print one out when they list out the dimensions of it. As long as the templates are part of the official designation of the rules, you could get away with a lot. Then you need to know how to use the templates, which they already show you in introductions. Now you can make them on your own if they provide the dimensions. There's plenty Etsy store that has made a ton of templates over the years. Other times, people just include how to measure it for the sake of fun. I mean, I could name Midgard and they use the term spear throws, but what they really mean is centimeters. It's nice to have, but you don't need it. play games where people use little clothes hanger diodes or measuring sticks to get away with a lot. The more in the section coming up is movement trays. It has been a long-standing tradition of war games to have that because it's easier to move your little dudes around. And believe me, some games you got a lot of dudes. Or other games, it's a central part of the system, and it works with the template. The example movement trays I have right here is a song on my four mark movement tray. Simple, made out of plastic card, plastic back when GW used to sell it. Some come as big, some come tall. Others are really simple. It's a plastic card or anything you get. Now, you see here, oath mark. Well, kind of. Now, an oath mark one would be like this, shown later, with little holes and examples you move. Because that one has the general width of a unit, I'm able to put a bunch of stuff on there, not too worried about breaking the rules. Sword point, you do have to come out and cut out the movement tray due to their designations using centimeters, and try to translate that to inches. Another something you should see is that some of these come in old-fashioned bits. The original ones were made out of cardboard to help move stuff in Warhammer, or they're bits of plastic that people put Napoleonics on. A movement tray is basically what you put miniatures on to move it across the field. Simple and effective. It's a lot easier to do that than move each individual model. Now, as you can see with what I showed you, I've had tons of these things. People sold them when Warhammer Old World went away, and so I bought them up. Mostly so I can move my medieval figs across the table, usually the same scale, give or take. They're measured for dimensions. They come in plastic card if you want to make one not so fancy, or they come in pre-cut plastic. I've seen people use wood. Now, I have tried using cardboard myself. It comes in a pinch. It's worth noting that one I showed you earlier, the working games at Oakmark, one's later examples given, you can see will just be simple. You put in, you meet the dimensions, and you're good to go. I always come out in a pinch is what you'd be surprised what you use as a movement tray.
The important thing you should know about measuring trays is that you get away with certain things with them. But just be mindful if it has a facing arrow or anything indicating facing, do not cover it up. Leave them where you can see them. Mark it out with some paint if you want. Now, a fun thing about movement trays is you do not have to do all these decorations. And I've seen people go all in castles, fortresses, and all that, as well as forests. Now, you leave them as is and use them and have them be all utilitarian and gray. But the fun part is decorating and setting up a story. So, with the sword knights you can see right here from the Brotherhood Without Banners, I took the liberty of adding some rocks and barrels, like they're raiding a camp. So, it made it a little bit more interesting as well as stand out a bit. And in the end, it depends on what you like. You could just add some flock or grass, or you could leave them as is. These are your movement trays and templates. You could get away with certain ones, or you can't, and you just use them as a piece of cardboard, moving your dudes along. That is entirely up to you. Certain games let you get away with it, others not so much. Looking at you, Warhammer of the Old World.
Lastly, in the more section of the video, I like to call this dice trays, dice towers. And why dice towers? Well, because you like flashy dice towers. Maybe because you don't like how people roll their dice, you can't trust them, or maybe because you like the clink of the dice inside the tower. Now, there are mostly just there for show, role-playing games, and hardly ever used in war games, which is what this series is about. Now, the thing mostly used in war games in this section, but not necessarily needed, dice trays. They keep them neat, they're organized, depending on the size of the game. You can actually get away with a pretty big one, like right here, which clips together. and or you could get with a simple wood felt one. Now, they're mostly just there to help keep the dice from flinging all over the place, which comes into a lot of help. Now, woe be the man or woman or the person who ever had to hunt down a single tiny D6 on a gray carpet. The D6 is red, but the carpet's gray. You think it would stick out, but it doesn't. I digress. Now, you see right here, I like how this one looks, plus it's bigger, fits more dice on it, and because I honestly like playing games with lots of dice. The reason why you have dice trays, like I stated earlier, keeping it organized, keeping it from flying all over the place, and plus, you have a nice little logo right here. Now,
The neat thing about dice trays is they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and it's one of my favorite things to cart around. Sometimes I got a little dice tray right here with my Star Wars Legion. Okay, not exactly little, but it comes with a nice symbol. And now, when everything's said and done, it's worth knowing that a lot of the stuff I showed earlier in the video and right here is optional, maybe except for a couple movement trays here and there. And you can get away with just using a tape measure. But a lot of this stuff is neat to have. It's kind of like with getting a board game. You don't need a table topper. You need a way of a simple coffee table and some books, and you cover it with a felt or a bit of a sheet. It's just nice to have. And 9 times out of 10, you don't even need a mat. You just need to know the general outline of how your game's going to look or the table dimensions.
with everything said and done, much with scale and dice and basing, it's important what you're going to be working with. So, just be mindful you can always get away with just reading the introduction. And use whatever comes in the box. Where box is, if you're playing something from Star Wars Legion, and the most important thing of all time is to have fun. With all that said, please like, comment, and subscribe. Please, to appease the algorithm. Mr. North,